This was developed by Macola for FDA compliance, and FDA compliance is probably the strongest set of guidelines that you can try to adhere to, even stronger than USDA, which is pretty strong in and of itself. So essentially, the serial lot trace function answers the question, where did it come from? Where did it go? What did it go into? And in the case of ingredients, what else did this go into that I need to know about? So what we're looking at on this screen is a finished good. In this case, it's 1012, Trader Joe's stuffed bell peppers, one of my favorites. And we've got a call regarding serial lot number KL2008, etc. there. And as soon as we tabbed off the serial lot number field, we got the complete history, and we could explode that even further. There's some sub-assemblies on there, 1001 and 1007 and so forth. We can see the entire history of what went into that particular finished good lot. And we also know that it happened to go out on 2 different customer orders, or at least 20 of the finished good items went out to those customers. Now, the key to making this very useful is to be able to reverse this trace. In other words, it was the item 1010 that we realized was the problem. And so what I did was I've highlighted that item or that lot number, and then a new button appeared here to allow me to start the retrace. Okay? Now, I haven't pushed that button in this particular view, but when I did, it essentially reversed the trace for me. It gave me this little message up top here. The serial lot trace will restart using item 1010 and serial lot blah, blah, blah. Once I clicked OK, I realized where else it may have gone. Now, in this case, it didn't tell me anything new, but it could have gone into 4 other products. So this was very helpful to be able to know this. The other thing that lot control and serialization will support is the shelf life and warranty tracking. And that's entered here on the item master. So you see the shelf life days and then the warranty days if that applied. Now, moving on to more useful tools, let's talk a little bit about replenishment. The best replenishment tool within the inventory application itself is the reorder point system. And when we talk about reorder point, we're referring to min-max inventory management. Now, this is a screenshot of a portion of the item location file itself. And we talked earlier about the reorder level and order up to level, or the min and the max. The reorder advice report is how we glean the information regarding our on-hand inventory and the recommendations for replenishment, whether it's a purchased item or a manufactured item. It really doesn't matter. You would do a couple of different things depending on one versus the other, but in this case, we're looking at item 1002, and we want to make sure that we include quantity available, the quantity on order with the quantity available in this case. And we have other selections here that you can play with. I've included the item detail on this particular one. I hope we can see this well enough. But this is the way the report would look, and it's telling us, you only have 1,480 on hand, none on order. You've essentially gone below the reorder level of 10,000, so it wants us to order to the max, essentially 40,000 pounds. And here's the other information about it. This is the vendor number 100, which is then used in the auto-create purchase orders process. So the function that allows us to create unreleased purchase orders will allow us now to create a purchase order for just this one item, or say all items for a specific vendor. You can use this a number of different ways. I've entered a request ship date, And running the process in this manner will create our purchase order for 40,000 pounds, essentially leaving us with an unreleased purchase order. This process saves a lot of keyboard input. You can always go back and adjust the purchase order for the quantity, the ship date, the cost, whatever you might want to do, but this definitely saves quite a bit of the time and drudgery of creating purchase orders. So when should you use reorder point? Well, I always advise that reorder point is good for items that are make to stock, that have short lead times, and have predictable demand. So it's not every item, and it's not really well suited if you're a make-to-order environment, and essentially, you know, when you get an order for something, you make it, because how will you ever determine what the reorder point is? And that's really what you need to have reorder point management be helpful. Certainly long lead time items are not a good idea. The reason being is this takes a snapshot in time and says you need all this stuff, but it doesn't tell you when you need it, which is what MRP will do. MRP will do that time phasing and back up to the date when you actually need to procure it in order to fulfill the future demand that's creating the need for it. So MRP is a subject for another whole presentation like this, and we will have one of those in the future to kind of give you the overall overview of how MRP can help your organization. A little more information about the reports and such and views within the system. One of the ones that I like the most is the inventory transaction history view. Essentially, what I've entered here is here's that same finished good item, the Trader Joe's stuffed bell pepper, and it's telling me by date in doc date order exactly what has taken place. There was a production order, there was a couple of order entry invoices, there was another allocation, there was all kinds of things that have taken place here. You need to know what these types are, but they're pretty straightforward. A Z is a production receipt, and an I within order entry is an issue to a sales order, and so on. Now, as you drill down into this particular that Z entry that we were looking at, it tells us that it was on document number 47 for order 47, and now we can drill down into the components. What was issued, what the serial lot numbers were, and so forth. So you can really get down to the details of what took place on this for this particular item. You can also utilize the inventory item history report. You can kind of breathe easy. I'm not going to cover every report. We're not going to talk about stock status and all that kind of stuff. There's lots of reports in inventory, but the item usage information on this report is very, very helpful, especially for planning purposes. Let's say the reorder advice report says, hey, you know what, you really need to purchase 10,000 of these things. You can see by period to date usage whether or not that's a reasonable quantity. This report is only showing 12 periods. You can capture up to 24 periods of history. That's a setting back in the inventory management package setting. Now, one of the